is subliminally. How about the movie Frozen? What is in there? Was there any kind of New Age stuff that's like sneaking through it? Anybody know of anything in there? I don't know that movie real well. Can you think of anything? Who's seen it? Yeah. Okay, who's seen it and can tell me? Is there any thought? Because really what you ought to ask yourself is when you see a real popular movie, when we were at Walt Disney World this summer and they did the what do you call it? Kind of the end show. It was the fireworks, but it was also kind of like a light show. I think they call it a light show. Yeah, projection. All of a sudden, it was really kind of creepy. All of a sudden, they were showing all this Disney stuff. All of a sudden, they got to the Frozen song. Which is the big song? What's the name of the big song from Frozen? Huh? Let It Go. Let It Go. Let It Go. And I've never been in a church meeting that had so much energy coming from it. It was like the whole place erupted singing, let it go, let it go, let it go. I'm thinking, man, we can't get this out of a group of Christians, but we're all sitting here singing, let it go. Now, when you see something like that just take off, it's kind of comical, isn't it? What touched into people and what was being sold there ought to be a question that you're asking yourself. What was the worldview and why is that taking off? Why is that taking off? Now, it could just be no big deal, but I'm going to leave that to you guys to think about because many of the modern entertainment is laced with imageries from the New Age. And so as a believer, we need to be aware of what is going on here. Why are certain things getting so popular? Okay, we're going to go on. Go down your sheet here. This concept of higher consciousness. That's what Shirley MacLaine and others were teaching. That there is a plane that you can go to in which you're going to tap into your higher consciousness. It's a spiritist view that you're going to come out of your body, so to speak, and you're going to go up. Now, what does that remind you of in terms of an exercise form? Yoga. Okay, yoga was a New Age worship practice. That's why a lot of Christians do not want to do yoga, because it is considered Hindu worship. The posturing, you know, the weird, like putting your legs up this way and that way. I mean, you guys are, a lot of these people in here are athletes, so you guys do all kinds of posturing of your legs to try to achieve different goals. But they really believed that when you did certain yoga poses, you were tapping into higher consciousness. Now, what does that sound like to me? Well, either it's just goofy, right? Because obviously we tap into God, we don't tap into our higher man consciousness, or it's demonic. Okay, you're tapping into something. So now, that's subject to different people's viewpoints on that issue of how much of what you see of this New Age stuff. I had friends who were into goddess worship. Do you know anybody here? Do you know anybody who's into the kind of the goddess?
I do not.
I don't know them now, but I knew them a generation ago. And we have a whole place at our university called the Women's Studies Department. And in the Women's Studies Department, some of them are into active, they call it different things. They call it goddess worship. And some of them get together and they do these things. They get in touch with their higher consciousness. They're doing these things. Now, what's going on in those kind of settings? Some people use things, like transcendental meditation. What are some of the other things that are out there? Reiki. I don't know how to say it. R-E-I-K-I. Did you know you can take classes at John A. for that? And that's New Age. I can't believe it. If I went out there and taught, how to study your Bible, I don't know how, but you can take these classes out there, and they're right in this New Age list. So people just think, it'll be a good form of relaxation. I can get in touch with my higher relaxed self. Okay? Does anybody see a danger with this? What do you think? Well, you can open yourself up to what the scriptures can call doctrines of demons. Now, I'm not saying every time you do a yoga pose, you're tapping into the demonic. I think that's probably, kind of out there. But you're not tapping in to the Bible view. We all get that? All right, let's go on here. A few more lists down here. What's the cosmic humanist going to think about family, church, and state? Totally non-traditional. Okay, 2 moms, 2 dads, living together, coming into your higher consciousness partner. Serious. I mean, all kinds of. People who just have all kinds of. We're going to have our own ethereal incense burning worship service, or we are totally, people can say, well, I'm totally not into that crazy stuff, but this is just who I am. See, either one of those expressions can be really from a New Age point of view. You see what I mean? So you can have people that are more traditional hippie looking that can get into it, or you can have people who are high educated, living a life that's far from hippie, but they're tapped into this same viewpoint because of what they believe. Get it? So you have people that are executives that are buying tickets into these, I know when Doug was doing the corporate world, this was years ago, they would try to get the guys, they tried to send him to a hypnotist so that he could get into his higher consciousness so that he could produce better in the company. So they paid, and he didn't know what he was going to. He showed up, and all of a sudden he's like, "You're going to do what?" And so he just kind of had to go to the bathroom, had to leave or something, because he wasn't going to sit there and get hypnotized. But again, a lot of this gets married in subtle ways. So when you're kind of guard yourself against, what do we know about politics? Cosmic humanism. Self-government, meaning we're all ourselves. But interesting, they're into the New World Order. This is something you can, when you see the phrase, one world government, what do you think of?
Just like someone, or one government controlling everything.
Controlling the whole world. The New World Order. Okay? That's something I want you to do this week. Go ahead and Google that phrase up. I thought that was just kind of something we just talked about at church related to the Antichrist. I didn't realize that there are literal people, and interesting, you'll have sometimes presidential speeches. Even George Bush. That's one time I was doing a little check on this, and I found out he was talking about the New World Order. Like, oh my goodness. The New World Order. The New World Order is the order where the higher consciousness of man will be ruling. We're all going to get it together. When I was a kid, there was this commercial that was was it Coke or Pepsi, where we were all standing around and singing, "What the world needs now is love, sweet love." Do you remember that? Or maybe it's too old for you.
No, I don't remember that.
I remember it. It's a classic commercial. What was it?
Pretty sure it's Coke.
Coke. They brought it back a few years ago, kind of reviving this old one. It's kind of the hippie notion that you could just visualize world peace. Those bumper stickers, visualize world peace, and then we put all the emblems of the world, great world religions, and we're all going to hold hands, and we're all going to get into this new world order. Now, I'm all for peace. How about you? But there's only one real way we're going to have peace, and that's through the appearance of peace. We're not going to get it through a new world order. But, our president uses this phrase, and it's borrowed from this teaching. Okay, what's down here under economics? Universal enlightened production. Okay, did you read that when you were reading in your readings this week? What is universal enlightened production?
I don't know how to explain it.
Did you read some of it? It's a little bit universal. Let's read it to you here. And this chart that we're looking at, and we're at allaboutworldview.org. So that's a place you can get a better understanding. It says here, according to New Age economics, all concern with the marketplace will be moot in the coming transformed New Age. They're waiting for the New Age to come. And so people of the future will not be concerned with choosing vocations that will meet their needs or those of their neighbors. Rather, people will choose vocations in accordance with their inner voice, which they believe is the voice of God. We're just not sure which God, because they can have multiple gods. Coupled with a reliance on our inner voice is the belief that positive thought creates wealth, often called universal enlightened production. So, this is why you've got to be really careful of people who are into positive thinking. Now, you've got to watch this, because obviously, what's the opposite of positive thinking?
Negative.
Negative thinking. So I'll tell my kids, guys, we really need to be doing positive thinking, not negative thinking. Because the scripture says we're supposed to set our hearts on things that are above. We're supposed to think about things that are good and excellent and praiseworthy, right? That's scriptural. But what they're believing is that there's this higher consciousness that if we'll get in touch with it, we're all going to have this positive energy going, and so therefore our enlightened self will produce income. Okay? So what do you think about that? Yeah.
Actually, I know it's kind of funny, but in running, actually, people try to sometimes tap into that, which is kind of weird. People say that if you get a bad thought in your head while you're doing a really hard race, then you're going to have a bad race, because you have to be able to think positive. And like sometimes I think, well, yeah, it's true, but with the way they're saying it, it's not true. Because they're saying, like, if you get one bad thought, then you're just done. So you have to always be thinking good thoughts.
Right. So it kind of gets into superstition, and some things that are...
like coaches will tell you.
Coaches, yeah. So you guys that are on sports teams, yeah, there's a lot of New Age thought that can get introduced in training people. You see it filter in through the business place, you see it filter in through sports, you see it through different kinds of training programs, you can see it. I was with my mom with the doctor not long ago, and my mom is elderly and was having some health issues, and so he wanted her to read this book. I can't even remember the name of the book, but I went and looked it up, and it's a New Age book. He says, what you've got to do is you've got to sit around and think about positive stuff. Don't think about your body decaying, think about it getting stronger and get some positive energy going. That's what he kept telling me. You just got to get some positive energy going. Now, it's kind of a close cousin, because you know what I'll say to my mom? You know what? You need to focus on Jesus. You need to be thinking about things that are above. If you sit around here and think about dying all the time, how do you know if you sit around thinking, I think I'm sick, I think I'm sick, I think I'm sick, which way are you going to go? You're going to be sick, sick, sick. So it's true that we want to control our mind, but it's not true that we're going to manipulate the karma. And that's what he said. If you do this, then all positive energy is going to start coming to you. My mom sat there and she was just like, say what? And I knew she didn't know anything about this. And I'm like, Mom, I'll explain it to you later, when we left, because she never really heard of this stuff, but that's what the guy was talking about. So what you'll find yourself is you'll be thinking, that makes sense, and then all of a sudden they'll say one more thing and you're like, okay, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make much sense. Just like you said there, kind of a near miss. And that's why New Age can be tricky. We always want to line things back up with the Scripture, and here's what I also would say to you guys. Everybody listen real close on this one. You need to listen and evaluate the worldview of the person you're interacting with, because it can trick you up. If you know that someone is really not a follower of Jesus Christ, but they're using things that sound spiritual, like if you go to Walmart and you buy a book about angels. Remember when all the shows are about I Kissed an Angel and all these angel shows were out, or I Went to Heaven and Heavenly this and Heavenly that. Now, you can say to yourself, isn't that really cool they've got a Christian show going on there? Okay? But what's wrong? They're talking about angels, but what could be going on, Matt? Do you know? Says that there are demons who can masquerade. Satan can masquerade as an angel of light. So just because somebody's claiming a supernatural manifestation or claiming we have this angel, you better be finding out who are they really tapped into here. Does that make sense? Okay, let's go on to the next one. The last one over there is postmodernism. Postmodernism. Now, there's a lot of big fancy words in here. For the theology, it says atheism. Philosophy is anti-realism. Now, I don't think we're going to get into that. That's kind of deep, and it's nice to learn. But look at the next one. Cultural relativism is the ethics. Cultural relativism. I think this explanation, I'm going to read out of here because I quoted it in a book that I wrote. The part that I asked you to read out of Josh McDowell's book, I think is the best explanation of postmodernism that I've ever seen. And so I want to learn mostly about postmodernism out of here, because I guarantee you will be facing this one constantly, because postmodernism is what your generation is called. The millennial generation is called the postmodernist thinking generation. So even this is the explanation of the 1%, because we know more than 1% are going to church. Not many of those kids that are going to church are going to be tricked by Islam right now. Would you just agree? I mean, they're not going to be like 1 minute going to church and the next minute pulling out a mat and and worshiping. But this postmodernism has snuck in, and it has really rattled the belief system. And Josh McDowell in that thing, if you haven't read it, you need to read that whole thing. But here's what he says. Trying to define and truly understand postmodernism can be a lot like standing in an appliance store trying to watch 3 or 4 television shows at once. Have you ever done that? Where they've got all these different appliances or TVs up there. He says it defies definition because it is extremely complex, often contradictory, and constantly changing. Now underline in your mind, I'm going to teach you about the viewpoint of postmodernism, but what postmodernism says is that it will constantly be changing. So what's going to be the problem here?
We'll never know.
What we chew in about 50 years?
The thought process will evolve. So you're going to have a finger on a pulse of where the thoughts are going right now. Okay, now here's a real good example of something going on right now in the news. Who heard about the nurse? Have you guys been following this controversy of this nurse who she volunteered to go with Doctors Without Border over to Liberia and take care of sick people with Ebola. She came back, and when she did her little screening at the airport, they said she had a fever. They said her temperature was elevated. So immediately, you remember the governor, I don't know if you know about this, but the governor in both New York and New Jersey, where the airport was that she flew in, had on their own, not through the CDC, not through the American system, the whole government system, on his own, he had said, I am issuing a mandatory quarantine for any healthcare worker who comes back from Liberia. You're going to have to be on a 21-day quarantine. Well, this lady did not like that, but she also had a fever. So they made her go to the hospital. Against her will, they made her go to the hospital. Now, you can just imagine right now, if you go to the hospital as a suspected Ebola patient, they're going to have you in one of those suits. I mean, they're going to like call out the National Guard. Oh no, we've got a possible Ebola patient. They're taking her to the hospital. Well, when she got there, she started claiming that this was against her rights, that she did not have Ebola, and later when they tested her temperature, it was not elevated. They were using one of those skin things. Here's what she claimed. She said, you guys made me so mad that it made my face get hot, and that's why my temperature was elevated. And now she is furious that they are going to make her stay in quarantine. It's turned into a giant court case. Today, I haven't read the news today, but today she said she was going to sue the people in New Jersey because it's illegal to make people go on to quarantine. Okay? This is kind of scary stuff, isn't it? So now I've got people who are treating the Ebola patients, and then people say, you need to be in quarantine, but they say, no, you're violating my rights. I have a right to go anywhere I want to go. So now we're going to get to have a court case. Now, who's right here? Does she have a right? Truth for her is that she's not at risk. She used her materials the way they told her to. She's not at risk. Truth for her is she's not going to get sick. So how dare we to tell her that we are not going to acknowledge her truth? What's going on there? Huh?
Moral relativism.
Moral relativism, and probably, the more I've read about this lady, it sounds like she's a postmodernist. Okay, she doesn't believe that the government should have the authority to tell her what the rules are, because she can determine those herself, and so therefore she's not going to be put into a box. Now, when you start talking about Ebola, how maybe that makes you a little bit nervous? Because I kind of like to think that we're going to have some sort of standard of care here, because I'd rather not have Ebola and Carbondale, right? Okay, so here's what postmodernism says. In fact, it's fitting that the very term postmodernism describes this school of thought by what it is not. In other words, postmodernism is the philosophy that succeeded and to some degree has supplanted modernism. Supplanted means what? Replaced it modernism as a way of thinking, and that has itself challenged the Christian worldview for centuries, whereas modernism rejected religion and superstition in favor of science and reason. Postmodernism repudiates any appeal to reality or truth. So, postmodern is tough to pin down. Here's some of the common beliefs, and these are what you're going to need to know. Here's what they believe. Truth does not exist in any objective sense. Truth does not exist in any objective sense. It just doesn't exist. There is no objective truth. Instead of discovering truth in a meta-narrative, such as a story, or an ideology, such as Marxism, that presents a unified way of looking at philosophy, religion, art, and science, postmodernism rejects any overarching explanation of anything that constitutes truth and reality. Now, I'm going to help you with this, but those are big words. What it's saying is there is nothing objective. See, a religious sense or even a Marxist has a belief system. But what they're trying to say is there's no such thing as one. Okay, there's no such thing as one. Truth, whether in science, education, or religion, is only created by a specific culture or community, and it is only true if you're in that culture or you're in that community. All thinking is a social construct. In other words, what you and I regard as truth is simply arbitrary because you were in a family that taught you that. Now, I want to say this in the right way. Last week I got challenged online by a group of millennials. And it was just really bizarre what happened. We're getting ready for that event last week, and this group, which is an anti-homeschooling group, published 7 articles against me, personally, my family, and anything that I ever wrote anyplace. And they used postmodern argumentation to do it. What they were basically saying is that if you are a Christian and you have a Christian family, you are creating a culture around your child that is abusive. Because there is no external truth, and that child has a right to develop their own truth. Do you see how dangerous this is? They're postmoderns with a capital P, okay? They've taken this thought process and they've injected it into your world. Now, I'm going to read you, next week or so, I'm going to read you a few of the argumentation lines because I'm really concerned about you guys. Because these are people down in your generation and they've tried to marry in some concepts. So what they're trying to say is there is no such thing as truth. Truth is only true if I choose to receive it. Okay, that's the phrase I want you to memorize out of postmodernism. Ready? Say it with me. Truth is only true if I choose to receive it. Now think about that. That's kind of deep. Truth is only true if I choose to receive it. Are you going to remember that? Someone had you write on the test. Okay, that's a pretty strong hint when the teacher says write it down. You've got to understand this, guys. I mean, I'm so passionate about making sure you guys get this. Truth is only true if I choose to receive it.
I don't choose to receive that truth.
Okay, well then that's okay, it's not true for you. But you as an individual have a right to determine what is true for you. Do you see how slippery this is? Truth is only true if, now, we've got a mother and a son here. So here you are, you're working to tell him the truth so he can be discipled and know how to live his life, so he'll be a godly man, right? Mm-hmm. But if he was a postmodern, and if any of that slipped in, and this is what's in our church right now. This is exactly why we're losing, like I say, the New Age stuff and all that, yeah, it's out there. But this one is the one that is ripping your generation out. Because here's how our whole modern education system supports this. Postmodernism is in the American textbook, deep into the American textbook. And so what happens is, you're telling him, you take him to church, you tell him about God, you even just give him values. Keenan, sexuality belongs in marriage. That's a value system. And, we celebrate God's gift of sex, and when you get married, you're going to have a great family. But here's what's going to happen to him. If he's being raised in a postmodern worldview, he's going to say, that's not my truth. Therefore, that's not true, because truth is only true if I choose to receive it. And I don't choose to receive it. Therefore, that's not true. So you know what? I still love Mom over there, because bless her heart, she's back there in the dark ages with that old truth. But we all know this is the May of the world. We all know that the world's moved past that. No, Grandma? What are you talking about? That's Grandma's time. We're in this new time, and here's what we've discovered. Truth is only true if we choose to receive it. Now, we'll have to love those people back there, because they're our parents, and you know what? I can even listen to her at Christmas time, but I'll just glass over. So she's trying to say Jesus is the way and the truth and the life. I'm not into Jesus anymore. You see what's happening? Because that's only true if I do what?
Choose to believe it.
If I choose to believe it. Now, how many of you can see this happening around us? A great deal. Okay? Can you see that filtering in any place? Just think about now, you're out there talking to other people. Is that how young people in your generation view it? There's multiple truths. You pick your own. It's only true for me if I want that one.
Not people I actually talk to, but I can see people like that are
my friends or anything.
Yeah. Other people, yeah. At the high school, do you see that? Do you have any, when you have interactions out at the high school, do you see that?
Yeah.
So they respect you. They respect maybe Micah, because you can coexist with this, okay? You can coexist. But the problem is, it's hard to move somebody over to looking for the truth. Because if you don't think there is an objective truth, why would you be looking for anything? Do you see what I mean? So now you go to witness to somebody, and they say, well, yeah, I'm glad that's good for you. So any system, here's another one. Any system or statement that claims to be objectively true or unfavorably judges values, beliefs, lifestyle, and truth or claims of another culture is considered a power play.